Hi there, my name's James. I run a little jewellery and craft workshop in Cardiff called Emily James Creative Studio. I started off with polymer clay, so I'm excited to show you some polymer clay canes this morning. I've got a few different examples of the kind of thing that you can create with canes. You can go really detailed, like something like this or like this, but we're going to start off really, really simple with, quite hard to see, with a little daisy cane today. So this will be a nice, easy way to get in, and hopefully then you can go on and use the techniques you've learned to take it in to do something in your own style and whichever size and kind of intricacy that you would like. Got Winnie as well joining us today. She's fast asleep, doesn't even notice what's going on. So if you've worked with polymer clay before, you've probably worked with Fimo, which is the brand I use the most, mainly because it's most available in the UK. You can get it in places like Hobbycraft. It's a bit more expensive to buy in shops, so I would recommend buying online. But it'll generally look a bit like this. You can buy other brands, but I recommend Fimo is best for canes just because it's got a really nice consistency. It's really strong and it works perfectly for what we need today. So Fimo is your go-to. So I've got some stuff already started here. So I'm going to start with white. Now, if you're like me and you panic with white because you have dirty hands, canes are great because you're not going to be using the sides of the canes. You're going to be cutting into them. So don't worry too much if you get lots of fluff or anything in this on the outside, because you're not going to see it in your final product. So what you're going to do to start, I would recommend, I've used more just because I want to make a bigger cane today, just so it's easier for you to see. But if you're going to start, I would recommend using half a block of your petal colour. So I'm going for white. Half a block of an outside colour. I'm going red because I feel like it's a bit festive. And then you'll probably need about 1/4 of a block of your centre colour. Again, you can go bigger if you're making lots, but if you're just making one small cane, that'll be more than enough. Again, I've just used lots more. So if you've used polymer clay before, you will know that it needs to be made soft, so you need to condition it. So you can do this a number of ways. You can use your hands, which is the quickest way because your hands have got lots of heat in them, and that is going to transfer to the clay and make it nice and soft. So just rolling sausages like this helps get it nice and soft. I have already pre-conditioned mine, so it is already ready to go. You can also, especially if you find it's hard on your hands, you can use a roller and you would do the same. So you would roll and you can fold it flat as well. As long as when you are conditioning, you're just being mindful of how much air you're putting into the clay. And just, I'll show you here, as you fold things, it's a bit easier with sausages, but just making sure these little holes like this are sealed shut and you're pushing the air out. That just prevents air bubbles, which obviously when you're making a cane, you really want to prevent because you don't want any pops in your pattern. So that helps. Okay, so we are going to roll a nice even sausage. So there's a few ways you can do it. You can just do it with your hands, especially when you're doing it quite long. It's helpful to do it with your hands. But you can also use pieces of acrylic, and that gets a nice even finish. But obviously when you're doing something so long, I do find it just a little bit easier to go with my hands. But the key here is to try and keep it as consistent as possible so we get that pattern to stay through the whole way. Okie dokie. So I'm going to cut this in half so it's easier to work with. So we've got 2 long sausages here. It doesn't really matter the thickness at the moment of those. Okay, as long as they're all equal. So now we've got our petal colours here, and now we're moving on to our secondary colour, which will be the outside colour of our flower. Let me just show you an example. So the dark blue colour is what we're working on now. And all you want to do with this is roll it nice and flat. So this is all conditioned And then now we're just going to roll. If you do have a pasta machine, if you've used Polymer before and you've bought a pasta machine, you can use that, and that gives you a nice even finish. But I thought I'd just show you the good old-fashioned way. And you're just going to roll this until it's nice and thin. There are things to make sure you're keeping it nice and even, and they're called clay guides. So if you've worked with ceramics before, you might have used them. They can just be plain acrylic, but you can also get pretty ones like this. And that just means as you roll with this in the center here, it's not going to go any thinner than the thickness of these acrylics. And these are 2 mil acrylics, but again, it doesn't really matter at all what you're using. Okay, and you'll see I'm picking it up every few rolls. That's just so it doesn't get too stuck to the tile. You can work on any surface you like, but I recommend a tile. This was just a pound sample tile from B&Q. If you've got marble worktops, you can work on those as well. However, if they're white, I wouldn't recommend it just in case the clay stains. There we are. So that's not going any further now. So we've got a nice, thin, even piece of clay to work with. So what I'm going to do just to make this nice and easy, this next stage, got these 2 together and I'm going to cut them in half. So I've got 4 equal pieces. And then I'm going to wrap each one of them in the red. So what I like to do is start with one straight edge where I can. And then let's see, what's this one here? Cut that so it's nice and neat. And then I can go over here, like so. So take those excess parts away. And then you're going to start to roll. So as you roll, really gently, just push it just a little bit further than it needs to go. And then as you pull back here, you should be able to see it's very fine. That's the little line that you want to cut along. And this means you're not going to get any overlap. So cut that piece off. And then hopefully when you go over there, you'll get this perfect join, which means there's no overlap and it should sit nice and flush all together. And then you can just give it a nice gentle roll. Okay, so you should have something that looks like this. Don't panic at any point if your ends look messy. It's not a problem. Our ends do end up as waste. It's not going to be used. We cut the ends off right at the end. So don't worry too much. But you just want to squish that around a little bit to make sure that you've got all those air bubbles out and there's no gaps between the white clay and the red clay. Fab. So I'm just going to repeat that process with all of these. And I have to, being optimistic there, that I'd fit all that clay in one. So just as I'm squishing all the clay back together, again, I'm being mindful about not popping too much air bubbles in it. So I've pressed it all together so it's nice and flat before I start to fold. If I was to put it all, mix it all up into a ball in my hands, I'm going to get loads of air bubbles caught in there. So I just want to prevent that as much as possible. There we go. So we'll start that process again. Just going to roll out our colours. And what we're going to do is just cover all of those in the same way. I think what I might do actually is only do 2 because I've made quite long petal shapes really. And again, don't forget to keep picking it up each time just so it doesn't get too stuck down. I do find in winter it's less sticky to work with polymer clay, but in the summer when it's hot, it can quite easily get stuck to your work surface. So just moving it around is a good practice to have when you're working with it. Okay, lovely. And again, recommend having a wipe handy just to keep, especially if you're working with red, some of the colours do tend to to get everywhere. Okay, so cutting that nice straight edge. And it's important that we have a nice straight edge and that when the overlap, that there's no overlap when we wrap things, because otherwise you'll have like a lump on one side. So you can see how this goes. This is a perfect circle all the way around. Okay, lovely. So again, I'll just show you that. I always find it's helpful to pull it all off the tile before rolling it. Press that down gently and then roll. Or roll slightly over and then pull it back. And then you've got your line there where you need to cut along. So these I haven't mentioned are called tissue blades. You can get them online. They are really, really, really important when you're making polymer clay canes. They are just really sharp, but also they're the length. So it's better than if you used a knife, you get it presses down and it ruins it a little bit. But it's, you know, a knife is fine if that's what you're starting on, but these are inexpensive and worth buying. Okay, so if you have, like I have here, a little bit of excess, you can just cut yourself a piece to fit in there. Just make sure you're getting it the right size. Okay, there we go. And again, rolling that one out there, like so. Okay, so you should have 4 covered, or you can do it in 2s if you've got quite long pieces. You just need to have enough that when you've cut it in half, you're going to have 4 of the same size pieces. So just making sure these sausages are the same thickness. Let's have a little look. Move that away. This one's slightly bigger. Okay, lovely. So the next thing we are going to do is taking one at a time. You're going to go, it's quite hard to show you from above. You're going to go all the way along, just pushing down one side. So we're making our petal shape now. And obviously the other side is going to get flattened by the board, by the tile. And then this bit here should all be flat. So this edge, top edge, is staying round. Bottom edge is going flat. So we're getting ourselves a nice little petal shape. Again, it's not going to be perfect from the view from here because the ends are the messy bit. All the clay kind of gets squished to the side. So the ends don't always give us a clear view of what we're doing. So don't panic. Okay, so I've just flipped it over and done it on both sides. So I've got a nice point at the end here. Okay. So that's our petal shape. So I've got one there and I'm going to just repeat exactly the same on this side. The tile's great because it holds your clay for you so it doesn't slip around. Okay, and again, I'm just going to repeat it on the other side. If you've not conditioned your clay enough and it's too hard, this stage might be a bit tricky. But generally, during that first bit with making the sausages, it's going to have got nice and soft. Okay, so what we have got here are 2 nice pieces, and we are going to join them all the way along that new pointed edge that we've made. Like so. Okay, and again, don't worry if the ends don't match up perfectly. That is fine. I'm talking to the perfectionists in my workshop. You can tell who perfectionists are quite easily because they find this stage really difficult. Okay, so what we are going to do now is cut it in half. You can use a ruler for this. Okay, and then we're going to pop them together again. And you can start to see the beginning of our daisy. So you can use this exact same technique and make, I think this one here, it's very hard to show you because it's so bright, away a little bit, has got way more than 8 flowers. I think there's 16 in there, petals. So you can change the amount of petals. I'm just showing you the really simple 8-petal daisy, but obviously all you would do at this stage is you would make them thinner make them skinnier petals so that you could fit more along to make your semicircle. But this is just a nice, easy way to start, and I would recommend starting easy and building up. Okay, so we've got this nice little semicircle shape here, but what we want to do is keep this lovely rounded petal shape. So if we were going to start to condense it now, which is the next stage, we might lose this lovely rounded edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to add strips all the way along here, and that's going to prevent it from squishing and just going into a square. So we're going to use our excess red, or whatever outside colour that you're using, outer edge, and we're just going to roll more sausages. You will find that making canes, especially flower canes, you just spend your time making little clay sausages, really. You get quite good at it. Okay, so again, keeping that thickness the same throughout is key. And I'm just going to use this to cut the right length. And all you'll do there is pop that in there, like so. And you're just going to put those down in between every petal. So if you're doing 4 petals like I am, there should be 3. Okay. Lovely. So it's only a small little thing that you do. You can actually make them a little bit bigger. I think I might go in slightly bigger, so just go again. And it's just filling that gap to stop us losing our nice petal shape. Okay, fabulous. Lovely. So we'll just cut those off so that you can see better. So you can see now it's brought it a little bit more rounded, evened out those gaps in our semicircle. So what we are going to do now is we're going to do the next stage, which is called condensing. So condensing is basically stretching it out. So what we want to do is make our flower a bit smaller. You can have them in different sizes. Obviously, they've all started off quite big, like this, and then we've condensed them down. So when you're doing a circle, condensing is really, really easy. But when you're at a stage like this, where it's a funny shape to try and condense, you just have to just take your time. But a lot of it is more stretching. So obviously, we want this bit to stay nice and flat, so we're going to put that on the flat surface. And then what I'm going to do is work from the centre out by pinching and pulling. And you want to try and keep it quite equal. So you don't want the middle to be really, really skinny and the outside to be still quite fat. You want to keep that pattern in the clay even throughout. You can pull it up every now and then. So you're just pulling, pinching and pulling to try and keep that nice shape of the semicircle. Now at this point, the clay at the ends are going to look messy and terrible. Do not panic. Okay, so that's made it a little bit longer. I'm happy with the length of that. So now I am going to cut it down the middle, like so. And hopefully now you'll see, whew, it has survived. It's looking good. I've still got petal shapes, so that's good. Okay, and then in a minute we're going to put it together. But what we need to do first is to give ourselves a little centre. So my hands are all red now. So I would recommend washing your hands before switching colours. But it's not the end of the world because the outside of the petal is not going to be visible. So you might have a bit of a pink outer petal. Okay, it's up to you how big you want the centre to be. Again, I've changed it quite a bit here. One's really big and one that's really, really tiny. So, okay, and you're just going to put it along the centre of this, like so, and then you're going to join them together. Just making sure it goes in the centre all the way along. Like so. And then what we're going to do here is go along just like we did with the petal gaps with a little bit of clay here. I'm going to fill in those gaps. So just do that on both sides. Like so. Okay, and then you can give it a roll. And so now this stage is much easier to condense. So the condensing is not just about making it smaller, it's about making sure all that clay is pushed together so you've not got any air bubbles or gaps in the clay. So you can do a bit of both. If you roll, the only thing with rolling is it makes it small quite quickly. So I would recommend using your hands as well. Just pushing it all together in a mix. Now at this stage, it's completely up to you how small you want to make it. And I'll show you a few different ways that we can use the cane. So it helps you decide then what you would like to use it for. So we're going to cut the ends off. It always takes off more than, so you can see we're not quite into the pattern yet. Looks a bit like a barbecue there. So you can sometimes see here where that's ended. Let's give it a go there. No, it's still not quite in the pattern. Let's cut it in half and then we should get our nice daisy in the middle. There we go. So you can see that we've preserved the nice petal shape here all the way around from using our little sausages. Okay, so using a flower of this size means you could do a bigger project with it. So what I tend to use, because I've got all these scraps now left over and I don't want waste, is that I would use these for the next part of my project. So you can do a number of things with canes. You can do, where's my, I can't find my demonstration stuff. Here we go. So you can cut out a few things and make them into, these are little granny square canes, which are really cute, really fun. And you can cut them into little pieces that can end up being earrings or pendants. Or you can do things like cover a crochet hook. So I thought I'd show you two examples here of what you can do. So if you start off with a piece of clay, you can use the waste from your project. This isn't going to be seen, so it's not, doesn't matter too much what it looks like. So with the crochet hooks I use, I only do them half the handle because when you're crocheting, it's nice to have, you need this part accessible. So this is just your handle bit. And I'm just going to do exactly the same as I did with the cane. So I'm going to roll it over, bring it back, and I've got my line there to cut on. And then you can just push this in. It's a little bit harder to work with because it slips around on the metal, where it obviously doesn't slip around on clay. Okay, and we're just going to make this into the nice shape that we want it to be. You can make these more like ergonomic shape as well, it's up to you. But I quite like a thin handle. So you can get these metal crochet hooks on online, anywhere really. They usually come in multi-packs, which is quite nice because you can make yourself a set. Okay, we're not going to worry about this end just yet. It does look messy, but I've got a nice little handle on my there. So what I'm going to do here, is that my one? Okay. I'm going to start to condense this a little bit more. I tend to keep one at the original size and one small, because obviously once you've condensed it, you can't make it bigger. So you don't want to lose lose your shape. Again, to keep things really even, you can, if you're working in smaller parts like that, you can use a piece of acrylic to get it nice and even. Also keeps your fingerprints off it. And then cut it like so. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this, because I've already got a thickness here, I don't want it to be too bulky, so I'm going to cut this really, really thin. And what I like to do when I'm cutting, because you'll see from that first cut, it's made it a bit more of an oval shape, and I wanted to keep it as round as possible. So what I tend to do when I'm cutting, I'm going to go really, really thin, like I'm cutting a slice of turkey, and then I'm going to roll it towards myself as I go down. And that just helps keep it a little bit rounder. And then after every cut, give it another roll. Sometimes it's nice to give the clay maybe half an hour just to kind of cool down a little bit before you start working with it. You can keep, I mean, some of these are years old, and I mean, these are solid now. So these would need to be reconditioned, and you'd do that by warming it up, by rolling it, by trying doing the condensing technique. But you'll see when you cut a hard one, it doesn't change its shape at all. So these are great to use, but the only problem is that this, you can't really see it on the camera, but it'll be quite brittle. So you could snap this piece quite easily, like so, because it's not conditioned clay. So you need an in between. You don't want it really warm when you're cutting it, but you also don't want it really hard, because that's also not gonna help. So you basically want to leave it probably half an hour after making your cane before you start to slice it. Some people say they'll put it in the fridge. I don't love that, just because it can make the clay give it like a condensation on it. But if you do that, I'd wrap it in something, with greaseproof paper or something, just to keep it from getting wet. But if you're like me, then you won't have the patience to wait like I'm doing now. Okay, so all you're going to do now is start to put those slices onto your handle here. Now you could do a mixture of different things. You could add more have like I've got, get yourself a little stash, and then make yourself a nice little pattern with loads of different ones on. Completely up to you. What's really nice is when you just add a few of these with a nice background and roll it, and they distort quite a lot as you roll, especially when you've not added loads to hold them all together, and they look really lovely. So have a little play around. Take me ages to show the whole thing, but I'll just see if I can get a nice kind of finished end, so you can see the process. I do always like to add a one on the base, just so it's tidies up the end as well. So I would definitely wash your hands in between to keep that white petal nice and clean. I haven't washed my hands, so mine have gone a little pink. But instead of using my hands, I'm just going to use this to try and preserve it a little bit. And you're just going to build it up like that. All the way. So I've got the end done there. It's quite fuzzy to see. I can't tell if you can tell. There we go. And then you just fill it all the way up until you've finished your crochet hook. And then the last thing you would do is just go in with this, with your tissue blade, and then keep your tissue blade still and roll your crochet hook, and then pull it down. And then you've got a nice, neat end. Compress it, soften those sharp edges a little bit. And then you've got your crochet hook. Obviously it looks nicer when it's finished, but that's a nice way of using a cane. Here's a side. And then the other way to use your canes you can do something like this where you've just cut the pattern out. With the flower ones, you can, I'll just show you with some of these what you can do. You can literally just cut it and use this piece then as like the top, as a stud or as the top of your piece, and then you're just going to drill a little hole in there and have it like a pair of, have it as some hoops. Like so. It would look quite nice as a little set. And then if you want them smaller, you obviously just keep condensing and make it a bit smaller. Or you can make what we call a slab. So get yourself a background. Again, perfect to use some of your previous scraps from making the cane so that nothing gets wasted. I'm just going to make this a little bit thinner. So if we're making jewellery, we don't want it to be too thick. So we want the base nice and thin. And then we're going to do exactly the same as we did for the crochet hook. And this looks really nice if you mix your canes up as well and do a little scene. Again, my cane is very soft, so it's not the perfect time to cut, so I do recommend waiting half an hour or so for the clay to harden up a little bit. And then you can go in with your roller one last time. And then just making sure you're rotating it 90 degrees each time, because they will distort your canes. So if you try and get them to, if you're rotating, it's going to be distorting evenly. Okay, and then you can take a cutter, give it a wiggle, pull that off, and then you've got two lovely little studs. Oops. Like so. It's really cute. Lovely. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of how you can make some canes. Just got a few ideas before we finish of what different things you can do. So you can go more intricate, like something like this. These ones look really fab as just statement pendants. You can go, these ones are a little bit more intricate as well, adding like a line on the back, adding a little bit of pattern. And then you can go more arty, less detailed, but more block colours as well. And then you can also always a bit of space for a bit of novelty. These made lovely crochet hooks. Just put the faces, made a nice backing, and then left these slightly 3D on the back there. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some ideas and a good start to making some polymer clay canes. And if you don't want stained hands, don't use the red. Fab. Thank you so much, guys. Hopefully see you again. Bye.